In the past, it seems we've often viewed the second referee's role as secondary to the first referee. In today's game, with the speed of play, the skill of the participants, and the constant rule changes, the second referee's role has taken on a new meaning. In this module, let's dissect some of the most important aspects of working as a second referee and discover how important this position is. Here's our agenda for this module. The key points including the primary responsibilities of the second referee, secondary responsibilities, as well as some tools and tricks of the trade, and then we'll summarize and wrap up. Let's begin with the pre-match responsibilities, and that includes arriving at least 30 minutes before the match. And we establish communication with our partner at that time, as well as host management. Our pre-match conference with the teams and our introductions to the coaches sets the tone for how things will progress. We need to be professional and courteous, and we need to remind coaches about key deadlines, uniform legality, rosters, and we'll meet with our line judges and establish our officiating management style for the match. This is also the second referee's opportunity to have a briefing with the scorekeeping crew. This is where they'll establish the communication with the timer and libero tracker as well. The pre-match briefing with the scorekeeping crew should include details for handling wrong servers, substitution procedures, and communication techniques that will be used throughout the match to ensure that there's a smooth flow. Also, during the pre-match responsibilities, we will be observing warm-ups to identify uniform legality, confirm rosters, and also to check for equipment issues and jewelry. As the match begins, the primary responsibilities for the second referee are covered in the rule book in Rule 5.4.3. Here we'll discuss some of the key points of these responsibilities. Determining alignment of receiving team players, calling net faults on both sides, center line faults, back row player attack and blocking faults, substitutions and timeouts, of course. And now let's look at some live rally responsibilities more closely. Being the mobile member of the two referees, the second referee's job requires constant focus, not just at the net, but it plays beyond the net as well. Our view must go from narrow for play at the net to wide for plays away from the net as the rally dictates. We're not constantly focused at the net. If there's no playing action there, we should be viewing the play away from the net as we transition. This will help us determine where we need to focus once play moves tighter to the net. This narrow to wide perspective will help us determine, among other things, position faults, net faults, center line faults, and antenna faults, as well as touches at the net. It's important that the second referee remembers that he or she should only whistle faults for which they are responsible. During play, the second referee is also an integral part of offering assistance to the first referee, particularly in the form of discrete signals. Some examples of those discrete signals might include set point or match point, 4 hits, back row player faults including blocking or attacking faults, illegal hits or double contacts, or a ball hitting the floor as in a pancake play. We need to be visible when we offer discrete assistance, not be the post with arms. We need to step away from the post and establish a line of sight with the first referee. It's important with discrete signals to remember that we should avoid offering opinions. Instead, we should only offer fault information when we're sure one has occurred. The second referee's responsibilities continue even between rallies. We're handling substitutions, timeout requests, and other procedural duties. Regarding substitutions, we need to learn to anticipate them. We must ask ourselves, when might substitutions occur? For example, after the opponent has scored a number of points consecutively. Or why might a substitution occur? A shorter back row defensive player rotating to the front row and then being replaced by a taller blocker. In addition, we control timeouts. And again, we have to have anticipation. When might a team call a timeout and why? And the reasoning is similar to that for substitution requests. Between rallies, we also have responsibility for bench control. We scan benches for the timeout or substitution requests. We may need to address a question from a coach when that's appropriate. And when it comes to interacting with coaches, we need to listen to what the coach is saying. Don't assume they're asking a question. Sometimes they only make statements. We need to respond with rules verbiage when that's appropriate to answer the question. Other times there are coaching statements that may not require a response at all, and we can ignore those. And there are times that we may need to request a sanction from the first referee if the comments or actions require it. During your pre-match, you will have discussed with your first referee how you might request a sanction. We can also anticipate potential questions from coaches after an unusual play, and we need to be ready to respond to those after the rally has ended. Let's now discuss secondary responsibilities of the second referee. Are there really secondary responsibilities? Absolutely not. Although we highlighted the primary responsibilities as nets, center lines, handling substitutions and timeouts, the reality is offering touch information at the end of a rally, whistling the antenna on our side of the net, notifying the coaches of substitutions and timeouts their team has used are also very primary responsibilities. So let's not neglect any of them or categorize them as primary or secondary. They're all very important. Let's move on to talk about some post-match responsibilities as a second referee. First of all, we'll assist the first referee with verifying the score sheet, and we need to leave the playing area promptly and avoid discussions with coaches or spectators. Once you leave the playing area, consider having a post-match debrief with your partner. Discuss things that went well and perhaps a few areas that could be improved. Honest, constructive feedback helps us grow as referees. We might even consider including the line judges or scorekeepers if they're available. And we need to maintain a positive environment that's conducive to learning. There's something we can learn from every partner regardless of their experience level. Now let's discuss one of the tools of the trade for a second referee, the lineup card. What kind of information do we record on the lineup card? Starting lineups, substitutions, sanctions. You might include the captain or identify other relevant players on the court. How we use the lineup card will be dependent upon our level of experience. Sometimes less is more. We just need to be aware of overusing or underusing the card. Every referee has a preference, and each of us has to find the right mix. If we're spending substantial time reviewing our lineup card during rallies, we're probably overusing it. If we're recording every match occurrence, especially when we have a good scorekeeper, we're probably overusing it. In this case, we need to challenge ourselves in our brains to memorize some information. If we don't use the card at all, and consequently don't recognize substitution patterns or position faults, we may need to use this as a tool a little more often until we become better at recognizing such faults without it. Some important points when it comes to using the lineup card include recording the starting lineup from the coach's submitted lineup sheet, not from the score sheet. If the scorekeeper has made any recording error and we copy the lineup from their score sheet, we'll also make the same error. We should also track substitutions and timeouts so that we can quickly offer that information to the coach if they ask. We should also track sanctions when appropriate, since those carry over from set to set. Another tool of the trade for a second referee is communication. On this slide, let's focus on communication with the first referee, and specifically how, when, and what we'll be communicating. First of all, we have to be visible and create a line of sight with the first referee so that we can clearly communicate the information we have to offer. For example, if there's been a ball hit into the top of the net and the blocker did or did not touch the ball, we may have to offer some discreet assistance while the rally is in progress to let the first referee know if we may have a 4 hits fault. Other times we do it at the end of the rally by centering with the first referee, creating that line of sight, making eye contact. What we offer should be fault information, not our opinion on a play. We need to know what the first referee might need after a particular rally, anticipate that, and be there to help them get the call right. Communication with the scorekeeper and libero tracker are crucial to administering each contest. This starts with our pre-match instructions. A few questions you might ask your scorekeeper are, have you kept score before? This will help us determine the level of experience the scorekeeper has. You might ask that the scorekeeper confirm the starting lineups with you as you're checking the players' positions on the court before each set. Ask the scorekeeper if they know how to handle a wrong server and discuss that situation in case it occurs during your match. We should also discuss substitution procedures, handling libero replacements and the libero serving, help with player positions, and how the scorekeeper might get your attention if they need your help. It's important to note when we communicate with the scorekeeper that we use clear, concise verbiage and that we look directly at them. Too often we see second referees talking over their shoulder to the scorekeeper and they don't make direct eye contact. It makes it difficult to communicate this way. During play, we may need to communicate with the scorekeeper to confirm player positions quickly if we're unsure that we have correct information on our lineup card. Often our communication comes between rallies, but don't neglect the opportunity to use your scorekeeper during rallies as well. We should be prepared to assist our scorekeeper, especially if they have less experience, when it comes to recording sanctions, exceptional substitutions, or any other unusual situations. We've discussed a couple of tools of the trade with the lineup card and communication. Now let's talk about a couple of tricks of the trade for working as a second referee. The first one will be memorization, and specifically let's talk about memorizing lineups. For some of us that might be great. We're good with numbers and we can memorize the entire lineup. For others it's a little more challenging, so instead start with opposites. Identify your captain, your setter, or other key players on the court and their opposite, and at least that way you have a starting point. You can also use unique characteristics such as ponytails, knee pads, hair ribbons. You might also try memorizing a front or back row for a team. And don't forget, we can always get help from the scorekeeper if we need it. Ask them for your next server or the next 3 servers, which would actually be your front row. And you of course have the lineup card handy if you need that. As you can see, there are many ways to track player positions with or without a lineup card, and most referees are using a combination of these techniques to establish a system for tracking those player positions. Another trick of the trade is anticipation. It's a key to sports officiating in general, and volleyball is no exception. A referee's ability to anticipate match situations will enable the referee to conduct a match at the highest possible level. Anticipation for the second referee includes reading plays and knowing potential outcomes in a given situation. For example, plays that might involve the antenna. Knowing substitution patterns. Does a team always sub a middle hitter out for a defensive specialist? We also need to anticipate substitution and timeout requests, especially after the opponent has scored a number of consecutive points. Anticipation also includes recognizing unusual plays and expecting questions from the bench at the end of the rally. We need to be prepared to answer those. We've discussed memorizing and anticipation as tricks of the trade, and the last point we'll touch on is being a student of the game. Whether we're a first-year referee or we have 25 years under our belt, we must constantly be students of the game. New playing skills and techniques are being devised, and we have to stay abreast of these in order to call the game fairly. We can't be surprised by unusual or unorthodox plays. We should watch our fellow referees work and ask ourselves, how would I have handled that? Or would I have called the same thing? By watching both veterans and lesser experienced referees, we can pick up new things or identify things that we shouldn't do. Specifically for the second referee, we need to understand serve-receive patterns. For example, is the team moving players around to get a primary passer into the best position? Is the team trying to get the setter closer to her best position? Or is the team trying to get their big gun into the best position to take the first swing at the ball? By understanding some coaching and playing concepts, we can recognize game tactics and strategies such as timeout and substitution requests, like we just discussed. And most importantly, we need to step outside our own comfort zones. This is part of the learning process. If you aren't comfortable with offering discrete signals to the R1, make this a goal and teach yourself how and when to do it. We don't learn if we don't try. If you aren't comfortable putting the lineup card in your pocket, force yourself to try it more often. This will encourage you to recognize sub-patterns, to memorize lineups, and identify back row player faults on your own without assistance from the card. So in summary, the second referee needs to excel as a communicator. We have to communicate with the first referee. We have to communicate with the scorekeeping crew. We have to communicate with the benches. At the end of rallies, we have to offer pertinent information to our partner to get the call right. We have to recognize substitution and timeout requests or other game interruptions. This season, set a goal to be a great second referee and excel as a communicator. When you do, your matches will run smoothly, your partners will be eager to work with you, and coaches will have confidence and trust in your abilities. Good luck reaching your goal.